This is our lecture number 2. We're going to talk about data mining in general, and more specifically about what type of data mining that we can apply on a huge amount of data. Data mining is specifically a field that apply algorithms and techniques on a huge data and not on a very simple data. Otherwise, this will be considered as database and searching for information in database. To be able to retrieve and to find huge patterns or important patterns, you really have to rely on a huge amount of data that you are talking about, 100,000 to million records. Where is data mining used mostly? As you can see on the web, you can find it in the e-commerce, maybe in Walmart. This is and also in Kroger and most of the department grocery. You can find a very typical usage, and you can see it when you receive on your mailbox some invitations or some advertisement related to your latest purchase, so you can understand that there is some kind of mining to whatever you purchased before. Also, a huge amount of data mining applied on the banking and the credit card transactions, because it's really important to know, for example, if you are eligible to have a credit card or not, so they match your profile as a pattern recognition with somebody else's profiles in the past. Also, because of the computer became very powerful, therefore we were able now to mine the data. And if you've heard of HPCC computers, high performance clustering computers, those are the ones that can really process a huge amount of data, such as the whole Twitter, for example, or whole data set of Facebook. You cannot run all the data on your machine. It will take you days and days, and your machine will break down if you are running the whole data. However, you can run sample of this data and you can analyze some of this information, but to find the real pattern you really need to run the whole data. Okay, competitive pressure is very strong, and therefore you find a lot of companies and a lot of industry compete with each other to find better analyzes the customer relationship management. For example, you hear a lot of the competition between Google and Bing and Yahoo. However, recently they agreed on one concept, for example, the semantic web application, and using a very simple technique to add semantic on top of the search. However, they are still competing with each other. And we know about the fight between Apple and Adobe, and Apple and Android, which is from Google, and that is ongoing process, and all of them, they want to satisfy their customers. So let us move to the second slide. Where is really also the data mining is useful? Of course, in the science. And technically, if you are talking about the remote sensors on satellite, and this became a very useful data mining techniques that gather all the information and able to predict what's going on on the level of the galaxies. Also, I will talk about the genes and the microarray of generating the genes and expression data. It's very important to know to discover patterns in disease, and therefore to find the best cure and find or analysis between records of patients, and then analyzing the same genes and see the similarity between them to be able to find the cure. And here we are talking about terabyte of data and even more, and therefore we need very powerful computers to handle this kind of data. You can see the merge between two fields in this area, the biology and the informatics, which is called bioinformatics, and they use visualization, high performance visualization tools to be able to understand the data. The visual concept is the most important concept in this area. So usually the data, we have it in very traditional way, which is raw data, like you used to it in the databases, like records and row and columns. However, in the data mining, what we are really looking at, specifically in the scientific arena, to classify and segment the data, to be able to analyze it deeply, and then maybe to formulate some kind of hypothesis, and build on this hypothesis. You can say that, okay, based on this classification that we found in this data, we say that this gene, for example, is the one causing that kind of disease, and therefore we have to focus more on isolating that gene from the others and try to find a cure, for example. Now, as you can see, data mining wasn't so popular before 1995, but it started to get more popular, and we started to gather more data, and the new data. This has allowed us to find some kind of discovering of the information. So really the concept of hidden information in the data, and that was the concept of the data gap that was not found in the past. And with looking at the data, with the time, we are able to analyze the data and to find more meaningful information. However, we keep the old data just to make a comparison. Now, the process is not really easy for finding the data, and usually in the data mining you hear the terminology like 90% of your work is to clean the data before even starting finding pattern in the data. So let me maximize just this area, which is the most important, that shows you the process of any data mining technique. So technically what really happening is you have your data, and then let's go back and have our tools again. Okay, so you have a data storage, and you select what type of data you want to analyze. So this is your targeted data. You have to pre-process it. So you have a lot of data that are missing. For example, let's say that you went to Walmart, you swapped your card, your credit card. They managed to find some information about you, but some of this information are missing. For example, your address maybe is not being able to be retrieved, or your telephone number is missing field. So to be able to have a very knowledgeable understanding of the whole data, whatever missing data is found there, either being replaced by something what is called missing data, and is based on the application that you are using. Some software, they will substitute every missing data with a question mark, so at that time those records will be omitted, or it could be from the beginning, whenever we have a missing data, we substitute it with the average of those of the overall data at that specific row. Then you transform your data to the way that you will be able to look at it, to be able to mine the data. After that, you end up with finding the pattern in this data to extract the knowledge, to extract useful knowledge from this data. That's regularly the main stages that any data mining technique go through. So as you can see, the biggest problem, and you're going to see it in our application with Weka, is if you have a data that has noise, it's very difficult for you to analyze it. So the data mining in general, it's a process, semi-automatic. Why semi? Because you have the data that is not clean. You have to look at the data first, and you have to start to delete some part of it, maybe manually. Maybe you will have to substitute some of the data in different technique. maybe you will have to read the data first, you analyze it for days and days and days, then you decide which technique to use the best based on the pattern that you can see in the data. Afterward, you can analyze it by applying some techniques that is familiar in the arena of data mining. So the patterns that are found in the data could be valid if the new data it's held on a new data with some certainty. Like we will say that this is really a pattern because there is some certainty from your decision. It's novel. It wasn't before known from before analyzing the data, and now you're able to find something that will tell us that it has a specific pattern in the data. Also, it's useful because, for example, in the scientific arena, it's very good for us to know the cure or to find the pattern in between patients and to discover what kind of this pattern that causes this kind of disease. Understandable, so we as a human being will be able to interpret this data and to find this meaningful data pattern in it and to be able to drive our conclusion from it. Okay, I'll give you some meaningfulness of answers. For example, this is a very popular principle that was known as Bonferroni principle. Roughly what he said, if you look in more places on interested pattern than have your amount of data will support, you are bound to find a graph. So what he did really, what he did as a parapsychologist in 1950s, his hypothesis was that some people had extrasensory perception. So he devised an experiment where subjects were asked about to guess 10 hidden cards, red or blue, and he discovered that almost 1 in 2,000 had ESP. So he named this discovery ESP, which is the capability that to find extrasensory, the capability to have extrasensory perception. And they were able to get all 10 right. So those people, he named them ESP people. They have this magic power that nobody else has. Then what he did, he told those people they had ESP and called them in for another test at the same time. Unfortunately, what happened is that all of them, they lost their ESP. So what did we conclude here? We conclude that you shouldn't tell people they have ESP. Of course not. We should conclude here that really you cannot make your assumption unless you have a huge data and you train the data over and over and over until you find the pattern, and the patterns are consistent and valid and will stay forever with the data that you are working on, even with a new data that's similar to the data that you start with. So sometimes, most of the time actually, you will find garbage data from analyzing if you don't understand really the data. So I will convince you before looking at any data first, or running any algorithms on the data, you have to look at the data and start to understand the field, the features of this data. So what kind of applications data mining is interested in? As we say, the banking, the loan, credit card approval, customer relationship management is really also another field that is important. Target marketing, and this is what you can see recently with Google Analytics and AdWords. What they do, they target those customers. They save your data through cookies, and they start to send you emails from time to time to try to attract your attention to buy stuff, or by sending you emails with promotions to be able to promote their business. Very important part is the fraud detection. So if somebody stole your credit card, immediately your bank calling you and telling you that we're gonna stop your credit card because we notice some unfamiliar behaviors in your credit card. Unfortunately, sometimes we travel and we have some different behaviors than what we used to, and they block also our credit card, and you end up, if you have most of your money in one credit card, in a problem that you have to call your bank and tell them this is me, and that's why in advance you have to call your bank and tell them having this trip, and I'm going to spend something different than what I usually spend. Also, it's very important to use data mining in manufacturing and production, which is automatically adjust to some kind of changes in the parameter. So we can find the patterns, and we can find what kind of maybe malfunctioning in the product, so we can avoid it in future, or just the opposite, that maybe some of the production unit that really went successfully, so we can implement it more and more on the new products based on the usage of our customers. Also in the medicine, and this is find the disease outcome and very effective for the treatment, and it's become much more popular for the last 5 years, especially with the capability to access anonymously a huge amount of medical record and analyze this data to be able to find some similarity in those records. Also in the molecular and pharmaceutical, so identifying new drugs. In the scientific data analysis, like we saw before, I'm going to mention now in the galaxies, and defining some subclusters. Website and store design and promotion, and this is very popular. All the time when you are surfing the internet, you will find some kind of tracking behaviors of users and trying to predict the future. Let me show you what was happening, for example, when with a recent earthquake, and just looking at the Twitter, collecting the data that the people were twittering with each other, and creating this map that showed how Twitter was affected by and how it was distributed. And you can see people starting to tweet each other, and where the earthquake started to appear in the US, and the green dots, all the talk about the earthquake and how it was distributed all over the area, and on the same subject about the earthquake. So this kind of the data, sure, if you are traveling and you're planning to go to that place, so definitely, like this user here, avoid it. If you have the plan to travel, avoid it technically to go. And that's the power of mining the data and finding and using the internet, or using the Twitter to distribute information and to find useful information from it. For visualization tool is important for us, because this will help us to understand more the social networking, which is part of the data mining, if you analyze the data, of course. Okay. So actually, from where data mining started, data mining is intersection between many different fields. This is some of them, like from the statistic, from the artificial intelligence, from machine learning, from pattern recognition, from database systems. So it is really taking into consideration many different heterogeneous data, which means that data that are not with one type, not only numerical, but also it could be category data, could be text structured data, could be semi-structured data like from the web, or unstructured data like web pages, which is based on the tagging. If you have HTML, so HTML tagging, or PHP tagging. So all those named are non-structured data, but you can retrieve the text from it and parse it and use the text to analyze the data. So it is an arena that merge all those domains. Of course, the other domains are older than the data mining, but data mining was built on top of them. And the web mining is built on top of the data mining, and the social web mining also is built on top of the data mining. So what kind of tasks that data mining that we can divide it into? We can say that it is prediction method. Maybe we use some variable to predict unknown or future values of other variables. Or it could be descriptive method, which is find a human interpreter patterns that describe the data. So we might want to describe this data in some kind of a way that will help us in future if we have some similar data. What also can be some of the domain, this is not only the domain of data mining, classification, here where we classify data that we know the labels of their data in advance. For example, if you go to the grocery store, you know this is the fruit, this is one class, vegetables another class, maybe hardware a third class. So you know from the beginning what kind of classification you have. However, the clustering is something that we don't have any idea about how to put the data all together, but by finding similarity between the data, we will be able to put them in cluster with each other. So the more those items are similar to each other, the more that's most likely to end up in one cluster. And we'll see some examples just in a second. Association rule discovery, this is very popular, which is used in most of the huge warehouses like Walmart. I'm going to have an example about it. Sequential pattern discovery, I can give you an example of that one. You click on the browser, like when you go to Google, you search for something, then based on your click, you go to another website, maybe then you click on an advertisement. So saving all the sequential pattern of your behavior, it could create a profile that we know what your intention over the web during this specific period or session. Let's say every 30 minutes I'm looking at your behaviors from the browser through cookies, and I am finding that your behaviors shows that you are interested, for example, in knowing some of the movie stars, and all your 30 minutes you spend on the internet, you're looking at different actor and actors, and you want to know if who's going to win the Oscar, and you're predicting, for example, the latest movies, and you are trying to see what is the most hits that could appear on the internet. Regression is very popular in statistics, which is you're going to build at the end of your pattern some kind of equation that can be used in future for another type of data that's similar to the one that you ran from the beginning. Anomaly detection is also like fraud detections, or finding, also in the scientific uses, finding disease, for example. But for example, also in over the web, you can find in the domain of cyber defense, if you have some hacking on specific banks, so you can see the pattern and you can discover the pattern between users and who is tweeting whom, and what kind of different activity is appearing recently, to predict the type of attack that is happening. This is type of classifying the galaxy, for example, used in the scientific arena. For example, you have 3 pictures and you're trying to classify them. So this is the early stage, intermediate stage, and this is the late stage. Okay, and what we have here, class of formation, just to give you some simple idea before going into the data mining. Just this is one example. Attributes, which is what we refer to in general, that this is like in the database when you have the attribute. So image features, characteristic of the light, maybe the wave that's received, and many different other features that could be used. Here, for example, this data one was used. The data size was about 72 million stars. So just to give you some concept of when you run data mining, how huge the data could be, and was applied on 20 million galaxies. We had object of catalog 9 gigabyte. Image database was about 150 gigabyte. Okay, what else? You can use a clustering, for example, to find some kind of observation about the movement of the stock market. So maybe you find a similarity. Let me maximize this one here. So the 2 points are more similar if they are described by them frequently happen together at the same day. So this is some type of a clustering. For example, they clustered in number 1 all this type of industry or things that are happening at the same time, and they name it industry group 1, technology down. The second cluster, they found all those happening very similar to each other. We're going to learn how those techniques can work, but I'm giving you just very simple input to the data mining. The third cluster gathered all this information together, which is financial down, and the fourth cluster are all up. So just they found similarity between those entities and they clustered them together. So you can consider it as if let's say you have a group of birds flying together and then they split, and you found that 3 of them they went to the left, 3 of them went to the right, 2 of them went to the up, 5 of them went to the down. So you can think about them as a flock of birds. You can cluster them into 4 clusters. This is the simplest example that I can give you. And we're going to see how the similarities, the more those entities are similar to each other, they will end up in one cluster. Let's say it's a circle, so you can imagine it. And the more those entities or those items are different than each other, they will end up in 2 different clusters. Collaborative filtering, which is technically this is my area of work, which is mostly if you go to, for example, Amazon.com, and let's say for example, this is what I was browsing. You can see that they are starting to recommend me some some stuff to recommend, because I was looking at the latest data mining books. So you can see the pattern that they are starting to recommend some kind. So this is based on something named collaborative filtering. This is one of our books, so you can see why this book started to appear. Most of them are machine learning, so you can know. For example, I bought what else? I bought a book which is Incognito, and this is close enough to it. The Mind of the Future also is closed. Okay, I bought Tourist, so they are starting to recommend me something which is I can see it's really similar to what I bought. So they had some type of mistakes here in finding some kind of results. Okay, what else? I bought Carmen, but not this one, so they are recommending me another Carmen. So with different singers. So if you keep clicking, you will find some other type of recommendations. And that's what usually happens. Like whatever you try to look at, they start recommending you something. And Amazon is not so good in recommending stuff, I should admit, because I had bad experience in the past with the recommendations. However, this is one type of recommendation. Also, the movies are very popular, DVDs. Netflix is very popular with recommendation based on the rating, so they will find similar people to you what they bought, also to what some kind of movies you bought, and they start to recommend you with similar materials. What else? So we talked a little bit about the anomaly detection. The slides will be available for you in Blackboard under the unit number 2, beside the chapter 2. Or I should say chapter 1 from the book, so you can start reading and getting more knowledge about data mining. So this is just a brief introduction. So we talked about fraud detection. Here, association rule, I would like to spend some time about talking about it, because this is very useful and this is, you're facing it in your everyday living. For example, what they did here, they tracked each user, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are users, and what they did actually, they looked at what the user won, and of course this is anonymous user, what kind of product the user 1 bought, and the user 2, the user 3, and the user 4, and user 5. Then they ended up with the following rules. They found, based on what we see here, like almost every time we have milk, almost we have Coke. Milk here we don't have, but like 4 out of 5 we have, every time a user buy milk, buy Coke. So the trick is to have some kind of analysis about the milk and the Coke, and I will tell you what kind of analysis. Also, this is a very popular association rules in data mining: diaper and milk and beer. So most likely the husband goes to buy the diaper and the milk for the baby, and end up also buying the baby because he knows he has to suffer over the weekend hearing the baby crying. So that's very typical data mining example. Now, in the past, Walmart used to do the following. Next to the milk and diaper, they will put the beer. So if you notice, like one row only different. But recently, they start to change their technique. They start to put them so far and distant. They want the user, the customer, to spend more time to search for the beer, because they know that he's definitely going to buy the beer, so he will pass through many different rows, and therefore he will look at the other shelves and get tempted to buy other products. So this is a new technique, tricking the customer, of course. Also, there is a very good successful stories, and you can click at the link and you can find it. So as I said, this is available for you. Network intrusion detections. So what they were able to find, they found a combination of sequential rule discovery and classified them like some kind of a tree. So they were able to find in the network the intrusion that caused by somebody was hacking the network. So they were able to predict it very, very quick, and they won one of the most popular in KDD, which is Knowledge Data Discovery conference, big prize. Major US bank, also customer attrition protection. Also, there was another application that they were able to segment the data, and they were able 40 to 50% of the iterations were predicted. So it was really a very successful story. Targeted credit marketing, which is here, if I go and try to apply for a credit card, they will match my profile to some others, huge number of other people that they have similar profile to mine, and based on it, and based on the survey that they had before, they will assess if I'm a good customer to give me credit card or not, or I am a risky customer that I will gonna not pay my credit card. So what are the biggest challenges in data mining? When you are thinking about data mining and you are building any application, scalability is one of the biggest problems. What that means? It means that if I build a system, you have to think about it that this system should work not only for 100,000 record of data, but also for millions of record or billions of records. So this is a type of scalability, like the web. When they build the web, they build it to handle all those billions of users, and we see the growth of the web. And we saw a lot of applications in the past. They couldn't continue because of scalability. They were able to work for temporary period of time, but with a huge growth of exponential use of the internet, they started to diminish. Dimensionality, which means how much attributes I have. For example, if I'm talking about the galaxy, we're talking about the size, for example. We're talking about the colors. This is 2 attributes, so 2 dimension. Then maybe I will talking about the distance, so I am in a 3D dimension. Actually, in data mining, you may end up with 100 dimension, and then our brain, we know that Einstein was able to imagine until 6D and imagine the stuff in 6 dimensions. A normal human being, if you stretch your brain, you can imagine stuff in 4 dimensions. However, when we are talking about data mining here and using applications, that's why visualization becomes one of the biggest factors that can help us understand the data. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to handle it. Complex and heterogeneous data also we have to take under consideration. If we have numerical data, category data, text data, how we can handle all this type of data and put it in our system. The data quality, how good is our data, how much noise is in this data, do we have a lot of missing data, do we have a lot of wrong data, noisy data, do we have outliers? Also we have to question that. Data ownership and distribution, this is really important. You don't want to get the information of the credit card of the person and his name is there or his social security number is there. Then you will end up with a really big problem, which is a privacy. Streaming the data, for example, over the web, you are streaming the data is continuous. And you want to take a continuous session, otherwise tracking a user just for 1 click, it's not meaningful at all, because the pattern cannot be recognized really only by 1 click. Okay. Recently, it's very popular to hear about the viral marketing, which is like the virus marketing. If you read the book, The Blink, and also the same author wrote another book, which is Outliers, and how people got richer and richer, or why sometimes some of the disease or some of the people get so rich based on the concept of the outlier. So here, for example, there's a type of recommendations. If you recommend some stuff to the person, so we'll get like 10% credit. If he recommends this to another person, another 10% credit. So the recommendation, it helps us to attract more customers. And sometimes, like let's say, the first buyer will get 10%, the second one will not get this 10%. Or if I recommend stuff to other people and those people buy stuff, I will get some kind of discount in future. It's a big arena. I will not let you just read about it a lot. This picture was used I'm going to use this application, which is I'm going to open it just temporary, just to show you one of the data, how it looks. So for example, here the red dot is purchase following a recommendation, and you can see that they are really rare, the red dots. Not a lot of them we have here. So product recommendation network, based on one type of database. The blue, customer recommendation, recommending a product. So you see a lot of people are recommending products because they bought them and they like them. Customer not buying recommended products. So those are customers, they bought stuff, but they didn't use a recommendation system. Like in Amazon, I bought the book, but this book wasn't recommended to me by Amazon. I just went and searched for it in their search engine and I bought it. I didn't click on the recommendation. If you want to see the Gephi, I'm gonna pass through this application, through this course, but just to show you some kind of visualization, because when you have a big huge data, it's very important to get the visualization. Just Google it, you can find it. If you're interested to go ahead of me, you can go and start using it. If you want to wait, you can wait. For example, I downloaded Les Miserables. It's a very popular story, The Miserables, should be in English. So you can see the data. distributed, and if you click on the T, you can see the player in this data. Okay, and you can roll in actually if you are using the mouse. Since I'm not using the mouse, I am, let's see if I can get bigger. This is just, I am making the length. So if you have I'm using my laptop, so but if you have your mouse with your roller, you can go in and out. For example, the biggest the most important actors, for example Cosette and Jabbar. So some kind of visualization. I'm gonna do the same with Twitter data and see who is linked to whom. So here you have the concept like who is from here you can see the ages, for example, what kind of ages, and the ranking, okay, and the partitioning. And you can go and play with the data the way you want it, and also you can change the layout. Of course, you have to spend a lot of time looking at the data and try to analyze it in different ways. Usually you have to wait until you see the final look at the data. You can see some edges in and edges out. We're going to talk about the meaning of those, but just to show you some of the applications and which one it was used in this slide. Got a lot of hits recently, which is IBM Watson, that finally was able to the Jeopardy, the game Jeopardy, that was able to defeat it, if you heard about it. So let us just have a look at the process of how they did it.
How Watson answers a question in 4 not-so-simple steps. The first person mentioned by name in The Man in the Iron Mask is this hero of a previous book by the same author. This is a typical Jeopardy clue, presented in the tricky Jeopardy format that can be pretty difficult for a person to understand, much less a computer. Remember, a computer understands code, ones and zeros, not nouns and verbs or people and places, let alone the relationships between them. Watson can't see or hear, so audio and visual questions are off limits, but everything else is fair game. And of course, it's impossible to know everything. As Alex Trebek often quips, the hardest Jeopardy question is the one you don't know. How does a computing system reach a single answer to clues posed in human language? Unlike traditional databases designed for computers, real language is implicit, ambiguous, and full of complexity. That's one of the reasons why, until now, computer searches have only spit out documents filled with keywords. It's been up to us to find the answers in those documents. Like our brains, Watson's knowledge base is entirely self-contained. Except while our brains fit in a shoebox, Watson's brain takes up more space than 8 large refrigerators. When Watson answers a Jeopardy question, there is no internet or helpline, so Watson consumes a steady diet of information to prepare for a game. Watson needs to absorb so much information because Jeopardy is open domain, which means it can ask a question about anything. So Watson reads, analyzes, and tries to understand millions of books and documents, content written in the way humans communicate, before it gets anywhere near a game board. Never before in the history of computing has a machine been able to so precisely answer such a wide breadth of questions in such a short time. Let's see how Watson does it. Step 1. Question analysis. The first thing Watson does is parse the question into its parts of speech and identify the different roles the words and phrases in the sentence are playing. This helps Watson determine 2 distinct things: what type of question is being asked, and what the question is asking for. During this early stage of the process, Watson doesn't know how to find the best answer yet, so it increases its chances by looking at many different options of what the question might be asking for. Step 2. Hypothesis generation. For each interpretation of the question, Watson quickly searches through hundreds of millions of documents, to come up with thousands of possible answers. At this point, quantity trumps accuracy. It's more important for Watson to generate a large number of possible answers and narrow them down from there, because if the correct answer isn't included during the initial sweep, there is no possible way for Watson to identify and justify the right answer at the end. Step 3. Hypothesis and evidence scoring. Of course, it's not enough for Watson to just come up with answers. It has to support and defend them. So after downgrading obviously wrong answers, Watson finds passages from many different sources to collect positive and negative evidence for all of the remaining possibilities. Watson understands these passages having learned the relationships between words. Relationships such as books have heroes or authors create characters. Scoring algorithms then rate the quality of this evidence based on everything from the source material's reliability to whether the time and location appear correct. There are still hundreds of possible answers left, so thousands of algorithms work in parallel to score the evidence for each and every one of them. Remember, this must happen in seconds. Step 4. Final merging and ranking. Different types of evidence are better at solving different types of questions, so just like a person learns from practice, Watson uses the experience it gains from trying to answer similar questions in order to weigh the importance of its different types of evidence. It's not about memorizing trivia. By playing thousands of practice games, Watson learns how to weigh, apply, and combine its own algorithms to help decide the degree to which each piece of evidence is useful or not. These weighted evidence scores are merged together to decide the final rankings for all of the possible answers, with the highest ranked answers appearing in order on Watson's answer panel. In Jeopardy! Contestants lose money if they buzz in with the wrong answer, so Watson estimates its confidence as to whether or not its top answer, along with every other answer possibility, is correct. This confidence is based on how high the answer is rated during evidence scoring and ranking. If Watson's confidence for its top answer is low, under 50% for example, then Watson won't answer. This is an important step for computing. Watson knows what it knows, and it knows what it doesn't know. There is no fixed confidence level deciding whether or not Watson buzzes in. The threshold is constantly changing based on how well Watson is doing relative to the other players and how much money is left on the board. In this case, Watson arrived at its answer with a 78% confidence. For that stage of the game, it was a high enough confidence level to buzz in, and it won Watson $800 in the process.
Who is Eritania?
IBM is using Jeopardy! As a way to push the science of deep analytics and natural language processing forward, but Jeopardy! Is just the first step. The same technology that helps Watson answer a Jeopardy! Question could have enormous implications for healthcare, finance, or virtually any other industry where people are using information to help them make better decisions. Watson's ultimate success would be measured not by daily doubles, but by what it means for society. Let's build a smarter planet.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed the video, and you just Google it. It's Watson, and it's based on a lot of machine learning algorithms and natural language processing, but most of them are combined also underneath data mining. Okay, so that was just a brief introduction to our lecture, and I hope you're going to read chapter 1 from the book, and we'll see what else coming, and we'll start working more with our applications.